Welcome everyone to a new appointment for the seminar organized by the University Hospital of Zurich on applied machine learning in diagnostic imaging. The seminar is open to and targets scientists and medical and industry to in the hope of closing a gap between what are the clinical needs concerning AI applications and the challenges related to the commercialization of AI-based products. Today, we are recording this session. So if you don't want to be recorded, please switch off your camera or change your Zoom name. The seminar is also acknowledged with 1 credit from the Swiss Society of Radiology. So if you want to receive your credit digitally, please enter your name in the chat room, and we will send it after the seminar. I'm really honored to have today as a guest Stefan Boser. Stefan has a long track record in the industry. Today, he is Chief Product Manager for ScanDiag, an AI company active in the field of musculoskeletal imaging. We will have the opportunity to go together with Stefan through the challenges related to a key aspect of the medical device regulation, which is the certification for the North American market. Briefly over the CV or the career of Stefan. Stefan brings more than 15 years of experience in software engineering and product development. Started, I think, in the automotive industry, and now since more than 10 years in the healthcare industry. Thank you very much, Stefan, for joining us today, and looking forward to your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation to talk at your seminar. So, let me start with the presentation about the 510(k) pre-market notification clearance process. So the title for the seminar was just FDA approval process, but it needs to be more specific when it's with regards to 510(k), since it's not really an approval, but I will get to that later. But it's a clearance so that one is allowed to sell the product to the US or North American market. All right. So in today's presentation, I'm going to tell something about our MSK solution called Imago Plus, and then we'll briefly cover the quality management and software development process aspects that are required to be aligned with what is required from FDA. And then finally, something about the 510(k) pathway. What are the important steps and what needs to be considered in order to successfully get through. By now, we are in midst of the machine learning validation study, so we are not yet there that we have the 510(k) clearance, but we are getting there and are in the final stages of preparing all the documentation. Right, so our product called Imago Plus is a fully automated service that runs in the background. So it basically takes lumbar spine MRI studies that are stored in the PACS and does actively interpret it. So it goes through and does a whole lot of segmentation and measurement, and then provides a standardized report. So in similar or in simplified terms, on the left side, you see the lumbar spine study. Obviously, that's the full study, not just 3 images, but just for visualization. So any lumbar spine study, or not any, but from Siemens, GE, and Philips, can be processed by our service, which is basically a service that is built up of different machine learning and image processing algorithms. And as a result, there is the PDF report that is returned to the PACS, which then can be used for the reporting. And that's how it looks like. It's basically everything is measurement based, so there is not yet classification in that report. initially the scope of the product was bigger. We also included, let's say, for instance, disc degeneration grading or spinal canal stenosis grading. But due to the, let's say, complexity of the validation process, or let's say the extent of the validation process, we had to simplify it. So that was a pre-submission meeting we had with FDA, where we talked about what our product is supposed to do and how we intend to validate it. And then one of the important feedback was that the scope might be a bit too big, and if they talk about things might be something, then you better listen to them and start with an initial module that is less complex. So that's why this measurement report that we return exclusively contains measurements. So we do, let's say, the vertebral body segmentation on sagittal T2 slice, the central slice, and do all the height measurements of the vertebral body. We segment the neuroforamen, but also the intervertebral disc and the spinal canal, or more specifically, the fecal sac, and provide those measurement results to the radiologist. And in terms of the integration, it's supposed to be smoothly integrated into the radiologist's workflow. So here you can see the Imago Plus solution. We currently submit a solution which is on-premise or in private cloud deployed. And it automatically, so it receives the study from the PACS and does the processing and then returns a structured report, which then can be interpreted by the radiologist for reporting and then used for further communication. Right, and here is an important feedback also from FDA was, initially we designed our system that the report is directly sent back to the PACS. So once everything is processed and analyzed, it's being sent back. But then there was a comment from FDA that the radiologist must have the possibility to revise or approve the report, but cannot just be sent back as a static report, because that could introduce some cause of issues, failures or something that could then cause any harm, or could cause some harm to the patient in the end effect. So taking highest risk into account. So that's where we had to change the strategy there. And before we send back the report, the radiologist gets a notification PDF, when he then can navigate to a DICOM viewer and look at the measurements and finally approve it, and then gets the report sent back to the PACS. So that's an intermediate step that is required, which is from a usability point of view not the best solution, because it would be better if, let's say, the report was already integrated into the PACS, so all the editing work could be done there. But that's something that is part of future development. So the integration into PACS is certainly a big topic. But for now, it's a two-step processing approach. So getting a notification report, and then the radiologist needs to look into the MRS, the lumbar spine study with all the overlays, and then can do the approval once he's happy with all the measurements. All right. So with regards to the data we used for the training, that's also important. We have different Swiss hospitals as collaboration partners and received quite a bit of data in the past. So starting from 2017, 2018, when I started at the company, then I was about to set up those collaboration contracts and acquire the data with those hospitals. And this is the foundation for the training of our neural networks, but also other image processing algorithms. And it's supposed to be a device agnostic tool. So we support Philips, Siemens, and GE, and both 1.5 and 3 Tesla devices, and the most common sequence types. So for the radiologist, it's not something that he or she has to specially adapt the protocol, because we have that much data. It's the neural nets or the machine learning algorithms learned the different nuances between different protocol types. Right. And then as a basis, so one thing is having the data, but the other thing is having the ground truth for training the neural nets. Here we started initially with a third-party tool, but then at some point just got some limitations. So that's why we decided to switch gears and develop our own tool, or extend our internal tool to that degree that we have the full control over across the annotation process with all the design, with all the review steps designed into that process. So here on the left side, you see an example of an annotated lumbar spine study, central sagittal T2 slice, and on the right side, that's an example of how that's currently not as a scope, but for the next module, that's how we label those different anatomical structures, in this case, the neuroforamen. So the degree of neuroforamen stenosis can be selected and verified by radiologists, not just one, but several, to have a majority voting, and then this is used for training. Right, and once having data and ground truth, the whole image processing pipeline could be trained and developed. So here, just to briefly summarize, it's image processing pipeline composed of many different modules, so smaller modules. Each module has an individual task. For instance, at the beginning, there is the standardization of the images required. So everything needs to be standardized so that in terms of resolution and also the disk space, slice thickness, and then all the subsequent processing is performed. So like first do the full segmentation of the vertebral bodies, and from there derive the measurements, as well as then go to disk and neuroforamen segmentation and so on. So in summary, it's a image processing pipeline composed of several dozens different algorithms that do the computations. Right, in terms of development, so at the very beginning when we started off with a prototype and didn't really follow a specific software development process, but in order to apply or submit the 510K application to the FDA, one has to follow the ISO 13485 process, as well as the 62305 software development standard. And also risk management is an important topic. So we had to build up the entire quality management system internally. That was basically an effort where we got external support, but as well as internally developed it together with our team members, so that everybody was involved in the design of those processes. Because in the end, it's important that those processes are really applied in practice, and not just are nicely written in the electronic quality management system. Exactly. And here, one important aspect is the traceability. So we have to be able to trace all the different, so basically starting from a user need or market input that actually defines the need for our solution. We then have formulated the user needs based on those market inputs, and the user need, as the name says, tells what the user needs from a solution. And then on the other hand, we have the requirements that specify what the product should be able to do in order to meet those user needs. And then each requirement has, as you can see here, it's a dependency to the software design specification, as well as the software architecture specification, where we describe all the details about how that's supposed to work. And these four, let's say, document types, they finally have to be submitted to the FDA. So it's the user needs, the software requirement specification, software design, and architecture specification. That's supposed to happen to FDA. And also everything is also linked to the risk work items, but also to the tests and to the, in this case, model releases. So where we develop the different neural networks, so that it has to be traced and tracked across the development path until it's finally deployed at the software, at the user environment. Then for so if you read the FDA or ISO 13485 process. It's rather a waterfall process. So it's like a V model that is the basis of the development. So one starts off with the whole planning and then writing all the requirements, or first user needs, but then requirements, and then thinking about the design and the architecture of the software until the development starts. As we apply an agile development approach, this has been slightly changed. So there is an iterative refinement process of all the design and the architecture definitions. And that was actually worked out together with an external partner, so that we can both combine the agile development methodology together with the requirements based on those standards, like the ISO 62304. And then on the bottom right, it's just an illustration that we have everything is working across, or working in a version control platform Git, and the Git flow is used that allows to maintain a development in the stable branch, but also do the feature development, and then later on branch off for the product development or product release, and then further post-market maintenance. Now, once the product is developed, it's also important to validate it. So any kind of verification can be done internally, but the validation of the product itself, whether the performance is well, needs to be done externally. And for that, we have performed one study last year, which was basically testing or validating how well the height measurement of the vertebral body works. And here we reached quite good results. And there was one of the papers that was already published. And we have another one that is currently in progress. There it's about the segmentation of the thecal sac, as well as the antero-posterior and medial-lateral diameters that are automatically determined, also based on rotation of the thecal sac in the image. So there's quite extensive image processing necessary to first pick the right slices that cut through the intervertebral disc, but then also make sure that the rotation is taken into account for the diameter measurement. Right, so that's what we've done internally, but also together with our partner hospitals. And then now to the third aspect, the FDA or the 510K pathway. That's again some other topics that are to be addressed, which is basically the core of the presentation. So when intending to go for the 510K pre-market notification process, one is to first start off with the device classification. That's the first part. And then once that it's done, then it's clear whether it's a 510K or another kind of certification that is necessary. And then one has to go and look for the correct product code. Once the product code is determined, one has to find a predicate device, because the 510K is actually a fast certification process. And the reason why it's fast is because the company that is about to submit an FDA submission compares its device with an already existing device on the market that is similar to the one the company is submitting. And then the next step is identify how to clinically test the device, compose the documentation, and at the end go through a very long so-called refuse to accept checklist, which is actually the checklist used by FDA in the first step. So they go through the checklist, and if something is missing, they will just refuse to proceed further review. But let's start with the first step. So the medical device classification is actually classified by risk. On the top right, you see class 1 is low risk, class 2 moderate risk, and class 3 is high risk. And for class 1 and class 2 devices, a 510K pre-market submission must be performed, unless it's a 510K exempt. And in the AI, or let's say all the AI radiology software solutions are in general a class 2 risk class. So that's moderate risk. That's why 510K pre-market submission has to be performed. For the class 3 devices, pre-market approval must be obtained. And that's also the difference now with the terminology. So for the 510K, it's actually a pre-market submission. It's a clearance. So that means FDA provides the so one is allowed to sell the device to the US market, but with the approval, it's actually a completely different process. So the pre-market approval, PMA, is quite a lengthy one that is opposed to the 510K, which is about 3 months review time in general. The PMA is something that is much more lengthy, can go up to 2 years because it's applied when it's high risk, where much more aspects have to be verified and validated. Right, and once the risk classification has been set, the product code needs to be identified, which helps then also figuring out whether the 510K is or whether the 510K exempt is the case, or whether it requires a PMA. Now, for the product code, I just added a list here. It's not supposed that we go through all the list, but it's just to give an impression. So FDA, for all the radiology solutions or software solutions, AI-based software solutions, introduced different product codes that are different categories, and those devices to basically have similar intended use and similar intended use, and therefore are in the same category. Now, in our case, we are our software is corresponds to an automated radiological imaging processing software. So it's the code QIH that we have to go, and that's more relaxed than some other codes like the POK, which is a CADX, so computer-aided diagnostics category, or a CAD-E like the MYN, which is also detecting some pathologies and therefore needs further validation. Right, and then there is theoretically, if the product you develop is very unique and does not yet, so FDA doesn't yet have a category for that, then the de novo application is required. So then one is to go through with FDA the whole product features and behaviors, and they have to set up or learn about the new product. That was actually the case at the very beginning when AI products came to the market. FDA had first to learn about how to validate or how to clear those devices, and then the de novo application was required. But since many products are already on the market, in our case, we can compare us to a predicate device that is in an already existing product code. Right, and the product code is, so with this product code QIH, we have the possibility to compare to similar products. In our case, it's Colombo. It's another AI solution provider that does also image analysis on lumbar spine MRI, and intended use is quite similar, as well as the technological characteristics is quite similar. So that's one step that needs to be done, is to compare the device with a predicate device and provide equivalence claim, which again is intended use and technological characteristic, and also has similar safety concerns that are addressed. Right, and then the next question is how to identify or how to clinically test the device. And here we have a picture that's actually not from FDA, but from MDR, but it's just to give an illustration. So based on the intended use, one is to perform a literature review in order to figure out what's the state of the art. in existing products and also about how to validate those products. And then one important thing now in this case is, so for our case, as we are a QIH product, we do not have to perform a clinical investigation study, but only a standalone performance study. So we measure the performance on how good the segmentations are done and height measurements and diameter measurements, but we do not have to do a so-called multi-reader, multi-center study, which is a reader study. That is much more work that's actually necessary once we introduce classification of certain pathologies. And the reader study basically then needs to validate whether the software helps improving the performance of the radiologist. But in our case, since it's more like a measurement tool in that scope, it's a standalone performance study that is enough. And that's actually currently where we are in at the moment. So it's for us required to perform that validation study in the US, although we have already 2 studies performed in Switzerland. But for FDA, it's actually, they told us we could argue and would have to prove that Swiss radiologists are equivalent or same as US radiologists in terms of education, but then also the data used. So from Swiss hospitals, we would also have to argue that this is that there is no big difference between Swiss population and US population, but that's actually too risky. So that's why we decided to go for a US validation study. So using 100 lumbar spine MRI studies and 3 US board certified radiologists. What they do is they do all the measurements, as you can see here in that graphic. So they connect through a PACS to an external validation platform. So in our case, it's Gesund AI. They can provide both data plus the radiologist resources that do all the annotations. And then on the other hand, it's our service that also processes all those studies. And at the end, the statistical analysis is performed, which then should show that we have similar performance like the radiologists. And that's the validation study results that we have to submit to FDA, one of many documents. Right. So that's the validation part. And then for the 510K submission, I read somewhere that's on average 1,200 pages documentation. So it's quite a bit of work that goes in there, but it's also a lot of aspects that need to be covered. So it's a lot of, it's also the whole risk management. So from hazard analysis, and then all the software requirement and detailed design and architecture specification. So that already sums up to, several, maybe 250 pages or so. Then all the verification and validation protocols and whatnot. So it's a lot of things that need to be reported. And that's basically what needs to be done in order to submit the application to FDA. And now before really, clicking the submit button, one has to do a document review and go through the rather lengthy list of all those questions. So that's a guide that FDA handed out, because what they do is, as already mentioned, the first step they do is the performance screening, taking those questions and figuring out is everything what is asked in those questions documented somewhere in those files that we submit to FDA. And then therefore it's also recommended that the vendor that applies for or submits to FDA also goes through the whole list. So it's also a 100-page document with a lot of questions. And once that's really covered well, then one can assume that the FDA will also be fine with all the documentation. Because once that's complete, then FDA will conduct a substantive review for the 510K submission, which in average or on average would take about 3 months until successful clearance, right? And here we work together with a US consultant who already performed a submission of similar devices in the AI space. So yeah, there was at some point needed that we take that step. We initially started with a Swiss partner, but with the first pre-submission meeting, we noticed that there is some kind of a gap between yeah, what knowledge we had about what's supposed to be delivered and what FDA requires. So that's why we went for an FDA consultant to support us there, because it's also very important how to word things. So there are a lot of guides or guidelines FDA put online, but working through all those and reading those is not really sometimes so clear what they really expect. So only with someone who has, or yeah, someone who has experience can say, okay, this part has to be can be rather short, and another aspect needs to be more extensive described. Exactly. And just recently there came the news that cybersecurity tests have to be performed by a third party partner. So that's something that was until October this year or September this year was a recommendation by FDA, but now they turned into a guideline, so a mandatory guideline. So one has to follow that. Otherwise, the device will not be, or yeah, they will just reject the submission. One has to do the work and then resubmit again. Yeah, and once that's done, then it's waiting and hoping all things are fine. And yeah, that's something that we address early next year. So first quarter of next year, we are supposed to submit to FDA. Yeah, with this, I conclude my presentation. So do you have any questions?
Thank you, Stefan. This was really a great presentation, and congratulations on the huge work you have done in the company. It's really extraordinary what you have done. Congratulations there.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's
no, it's really true. Any questions from the audience? I have a couple of questions while the other maybe are thinking about the formulation. You mentioned at the beginning that in order to get the clearance, the FDA requested that the end user, so the radiologist, I assume is your end user, was able to review the report you're generating.
Yes. Yeah.
That means that they requested you to create a front end dedicated to this task for the recommendation. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's because they said otherwise the responsibility is on our side, and in terms of security and liability, that yeah, is not really possible. So in that meeting, they gave us different hints on what we should look at. They do not really say that you should do it that way, but if they give you a recommendation to look into that and think over, and that finally the responsibility has to be on the side of the radiologist, also because of what could happen downstream if it was wrong results, wrong classifications. It's now maybe a bit more relaxed if it's only measurement results, but still radiologist is supposed to change those. And yeah, and not just must not just take the report as it is and is returned from our fully automated service. And that's why we had to implement that additional step. So we could basically build on an existing DICOM viewer and integrate the functionality needed for that.
Incredible. And you mentioned that you use an external platform once you did concerning the validation studies that they have requested to you. You mentioned in your slide that you had an external platform to compare the segmentation of the radiologist to the results of the segmentation of your software.
Yes.
And this is the question is, was that required by the FDA, the use of this platform, or why it was not enough to have a classical comparison?
Yeah, no, it was actually not required to have, let's say, to have that external platform provider or provider that supports those validation study. But in the end, we could also have done it ourselves, acquire data from different US hospitals and contracting US board certified radiologists. But at the end, it's more complicated, more time intensive, and in the end, also more expensive to do that on our own, and also more complicated. So getting access to data in the US is much more difficult than, for instance, it was in Switzerland until now. So that's why we decided to go for that. And then also the whole process. So at the beginning, we also designed the process the way that the radiologist would have to enter those results into an Excel spreadsheet, which is very error prone and very tedious. And in that platform, it's a lot of things are, in terms of usability, simplified, so the radiologist can basically focus on the measurements and is guided to, it's kind of a to-do list, what to measure. And then with this, all those quality checks and measurements, validation can be simplified.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, and it's also the goal to later on, if we have, so it's the goal that we do submit another module, also modules in knee and the shoulder area, and kind of reusing the same platform is actually the benefit. There was some kind of integration work necessary since the platform didn't support to our to what we provide on our API, but they have been very fast and also high quality in terms of developing that functionality for us to use.
Very good. I think as said, super impressive, Stefan. I can just imagine how many hours and days and months of work are behind this presentation of today. Any other questions?
By the way.
Other questions from the audience? Yeah. Well, I have a lot of questions. I think I will contact you separately.
Yes, of course. That would be great.
The conversation.
Good exchange.
Yes, absolutely.
Also, since you have experience with MDR and we have now more and more experience with FDA, although we are not yet through, but on a good way there.
Yeah, no, it's really impressive what you have done. Actually, there is the legend that FDA is easier than MDR, but I don't know. I have some question marks in my head at the moment. I wanted to thank you again officially. Thank you very much to the people that joined the seminar. Please enter your email if you need the credits from the Swiss Society of Radiology. And yes, stay tuned for our row of seminars. The last appointment will be for this year in December. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Stefan. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.